We glory in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ. With these words, we end the time of Lent and begin this sacred time, the Paschal Triduum. What does it mean to glory in the cross of Jesus Christ? What does it look like? What does it feel like? St. Paul was the first apostle to interpret Jesus' death. And you can tell immediately that Paul does not belong to the 21st century because Paul showed absolutely no interest in trying to decide who's to blame for Jesus' death. That's our trademark. When something happens, who's to blame? We always want to know who's to blame. It doesn't even occur to Paul to ask the question. Paul rather interprets Jesus' death as God's loving and redemptive action on behalf of all humanity and all creation. In his first letter to the Corinthians, Paul proclaims that in the cross, we come to see that God's powerlessness is greater than humanity's power, and God's folly is wiser than human wisdom. I think one of or their cancer has returned, and we want to fix it. We want to take it away. We know we can't. And that really isn't their expectation either. They just want someone to hear their hurt, to hear their fear, to hear their grief or their uncertainty. And so we try simply to listen and be present. And we try to avoid falling back onto those terrible cliches that are so patronizing. Oh, it'll be okay. You know, God won't give you anything you can't handle. They're in a better place now. It takes the powerlessness of the cross to just sit and witness and be present to such painful suffering. And that mutual helplessness, that silence, that horrible feeling of being useless and totally dependent on God is incredibly awkward. And yet, is there anything more holy? In moments like this, we come face to face with the fact, as Paul would teach us, that we cannot save ourselves, no matter how good we are or how orthodox our faith. In that encounter with our human futility, Paul becomes the great advocate of the cross. In his letters to the Galatians and to the Romans, Paul proudly preaches Christ crucified. And he goes on to say that on that cross were nailed sin and death. With Christ's death, sin and death have died. They are destroyed, and they have no power over us. Paul is emphatic that Christ has died for all, and that all have been redeemed by his cross. There are no exceptions, no ifs, no buts, no what ifs. Paul teaches that Christ, by his cross, by his death, has made salvation definitive for everyone. Salvation is definitive. And that same certainty is found in the gospel that we have proclaimed today. When Jesus dies on the cross, he declares it is finished. Those three words do not refer to Jesus' physical demise. Jesus is not announcing that he is dead. The Greek is very clear in this. These words indicate that redemption has been accomplished. The goal is complete. The goal of redeeming all humanity and all creation has happened in Jesus' death on the cross. That's why we pause at that point. We pause our reading at that point, not so much in sorrow. It is a pause of wonder, of awe, of humility and astonishment and speechlessness. Yes, we glory in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ. That does not mean we ignore suffering humanity. Frankly, this year, this Good Friday, I don't know how anyone can legitimately preach on Good Friday and not acknowledge that gun violence is the leading cause of death of children in our country. And it has been now for several years. Let's put that a bit more concretely. Parents, grandparents, godparents. This means that the child you love is more likely to die from gun violence than they are from disease or an accident. No one person is responsible for that. But each and every one of us is complicit in that. It's why the church speaks of social sin. Likewise, on this Good Friday, I don't know how anyone could preach and not think about the atrocities taking place in Ukraine. Or how our prayers and thoughts cannot be with the very brave women of Iran who protest and know the price they are going to pay for that protest. Here locally in our own parish, we can never observe Good Friday without thinking of our sisters and brothers in Mirabelais, the long suffering of the people of Haiti. And I know for myself, every year on Good Friday is the one day of the year where I feel the division in the Christian church most acutely and most powerfully. and it is a division that renders our witness to Christ and the gospel so ineffective. And yet, in the midst of our disheveled pain and our chaos and hubris, I find the words of the Episcopal priest, the Reverend Barbara Taylor Brown, sounding very much like St. Paul in our own day, as she writes, quote, "The power of the cross wins by losing. It disarms the enemy by refusing to fight. It dismisses any victory defined as the defeat of one people by another people, holding out for the one true victory of a healed world at peace with God." End quote. We glory in the cross of our Lord Jesus Christ.